Stormbringer Enhancement Shaman was incredibly strong last season. In Season 2, they've nerfed the power of lightning dogs a lot so that less of your total damage comes from spenders, but they have in turn buffed your builders such that Enhanced now plays like more of an attack and spell weaver. This guide is designed to detail the gameplay in both Mythic Plus and Raid. I won't go over the most basic spell interactions, but I will explain everything relevant to Stormbringer as well as the things that change with the patch. These are the talents I believe are the most well-rounded for Mythic Plus Stormbringer. However, there are many different talent builds and it is up in the air which one to play. I will go over these later. Firstly, I will talk about how they changed our builders. Crash Lightning does triple the base damage and then also gains another multiplier from the tier set, and on your primary target a third multiplier. This makes Crash Lightning your strongest button on AoE that we are essentially pressing off cooldown. Because we are pressing Crash Lightning off cooldown, we don't have to care about the buff that it gives so much because it is always active. Stormstrike now does 50% more damage than before and is also buffed by a myriad of physical talents that we run, such as the Legacy of the Frost Witch or Physical Feral Spirits. Stormstrike is now almost as strong as a spender on single target. Lava Lash also does more damage, but it's still pretty small in this build, so it's really only for spreading Flame Shock. And Voltaic Blaze now actually scales with Mastery and actually does a lot of damage, so we do end up using almost every proc of this. Now to talk about Tempest, it still functions similarly to last season in that it's a very strong spender on AoE and single target, and it still summons a Lightning Dog to amplify your damage. But the Lightning Dog is weaker than before, and the Tempest itself does less damage. Additionally, you now need 4 Awakening Storm stacks to proc Tempest. This weak aura from Nick Yu is pretty much mandatory to play this tree. If you still have it from last season, make sure to update it because some interactions have changed. It is important when going between pulls in Mythic Plus to always start a pull with an early Tempest to get some Lightning Dogs rolling. It is less important than before, but it is still definitely something you want to be doing. We do this by watching our weak aura as we leave a pull. Our goal is to have 20 to 30 progress towards our next Tempest, or to have a Tempest already proc as we leave a pull. You could also have 3 Awakening stacks saved up, however that is less reliable. At the end of a pull, consider not spending when the last mob is about to die if you need to conserve these stacks. Or, if you have a Tempest already, you can Elemental Blast to save it. To talk about Primordial Wave, this works quite differently now. There is no interaction with Lightning Bolts or Tempest. You don't need to save Primordial Wave for a Tempest, and you don't need to save Tempest for a Primordial Wave. It still does apply 6 Lightning Rods though. So now, the way Primordial Wave works is it needs Flame Shocks active before it is cast. So first you would press Flame Shock, and then Lava Lash to spread, and then Primordial Wave. It also generates 5 Maelstrom, which is quite nice. In most M+ builds, we will take the entire row, giving us Splintered Elements Haste Buff and Primordial Storm. Primordial Storm is a 3-step AoE spender with each hit proccing Wind Fury. Ideally, you will want to press this in Doom Winds if it lines up. Because it procs Wind Fury, Primordial Storm will top your Maelstrom if it hits 2 targets, essentially making it a free spender. Arc Discharge is a bit more notable now. When you cast Tempest, you gain a stack of Arc Discharge, which can now stack to 2. These stacks increase your Chain Lightning or Lightning Bolt damage by 40% and also cause it to cast an additional minor low damage cast extra. The advantage of this is that because each Chain Lightning reduces the cooldown of Crash Lightning, this actually reduces the crash cooldown twice when used on Chain Lightning, essentially fully resetting the cooldown. Also, when you press Primordial Storm, you want to try having Arc Discharge active because it increases the damage of the extra spender that it casts multiplicatively. And as a note, even though Arc Discharge makes the spells instant, you never want to press them without Maelstrom because they don't do much damage without Maelstrom, so it would be a wasted proc and global. And to talk about spending Maelstrom. Because we are pressing builders so much, we will typically spend on 10 only, but on AoE, it doesn't really matter what you spend on, and spending on 5 is fine because you mostly want the secondary effects. On AoE, we only really need to press Chain Lightning and Tempest, and an advantage of Chain Lightning is that it will refund some cooldown on Crash Lightning and also increase the damage of your next Crash Lightning. On single target, we press a mix of Elemental Blast and Lightning Bolt and Tempest. The Elemental Blast rules are no longer complicated at all. The dogs we have out don't matter, you just press Elemental Blast as your single target spender if it is off cooldown. No need to think too much about it. Now to organize this into a priority list, on AoE we would cast Tempest if we had it, over Crash Lightning, over Chain Lightning, with Maelstrom stacks not really mattering. Then we would actually press Voltaic Blaze over Stormstrike, and because we are pressing Voltaic Blaze so much, it is primarily how we keep up Flame Shock. We have a lot of opportunities where we press Stormstrike, and only very rarely will we press Lava Lash in AoE outside of the opener. In single target, you have a pretty basic spender priority in Elemental Blast over Tempest over Lightning Bolt. Obviously, if your Tempest is running out soon, you would prio that instead, and then you would get into spamming Stormstrike. If you're out of Stormstrike, so if your Flame Shock is running out, then you would press a Voltaic Blaze, and if none of the above were true or if your tier set stacks were falling off, you would press Crash Lightning. Lava Lash, or Ice Strike if you have it, are last resort buttons on single target. Now to talk about our cooldowns, Doom Winds is now a lot stronger than it used to be. It scales off Mastery and all of your wolves, so it actually does big damage. It also triples your Wind Fury chance, which is stronger now because we are pressing more builders that proc Wind Fury, such as Storm Strike and Crash Lightning. Because Globals and Ascendance are now more valuable, we will press Doom Winds the global before Ascendance, and then a minute after by itself. However, it is completely fine and acceptable now to fully desync Doom Winds and Ascendance if the timers do not line up. To talk about Ascendance, because Storm Strike is doing so much damage, the value of Wind Strike has gone up a lot, and on certain target counts you even press Crash Lightning in Ascendance. This is a model single target Ascendance. You press one button. In AoE, it gets a bit more complicated. On low target counts, if you have Tempest and Maelstrom, you press Tempest. This will then put you on low Maelstrom if you don't get a reset. In this situation, you would press Crash Lightning. Otherwise, you would just press Wind Strike. When we start getting to higher target counts, we actually press Crash Lightning on cooldown in Ascendance, and then fill in between with Tempest and Wind Strike. It is very beneficial to think about Arc Discharge here. Normally, it will be 2 Wind Strikes between Crash Lightning, but if you have Arc Discharge, it will be 1 Wind Strike in between. Now to look at a proper opener. On single target, you would walk in pressing Flame Shock. You would press 1 Storm Strike for Maelstrom, press Doom Winds, and then Ascendance, and then 15 seconds of spamming Wind Strike. If you have Primordial Wave, you would fit Wave and Storm on either side of the Doom Wind. On AoE, your opener is a bit more complex. You walk in with a Flame Shock, crash for the damage and buff, and then Lava Lash to spread the Flame Shock. You can now press Primordial Wave into Doom Wind. However, if we have a Tempest, it is a good idea to fit it in before the Doom Winds. While in the Doom Winds, we will press Primordial Storm and Crash Lightning, then enter Ascendance. One additional note is that we do not need to enter Ascendance until the Doom Winds ends. If you have multiple Tempests or you know the pull will last a long time, it can be beneficial to ride out the whole Doom Winds pressing a mix of Crash Lightning, Tempest, and Storm Strike, and entering Ascendance as Doom Winds expires. Alright, so here's a sample pull of Stormbringer on the first pull of the dungeon. I go in, I have 2 Tempest pre-stacked, so I just instantly spend both of them. I get a reset as well, which is pretty nice. I Flame Shock and then spread my Lava Lash. I Crash Lightning and then Primordial Wave. Here, I will go into Doom Winds and then Primordial Storm. But now, I'm not actually going to go into Ascendance. I'm actually just going to wait out the Doom Winds for the next 5 seconds and just press Crash Lightning, Chain Lightning, Storm Strike. And this gives me the most of my Maelstrom generation in Doom Winds. Now Doom Winds is over and I've entered Ascendance. I'm pressing Tempest and Wind Strike only as I care about pro damage. I realize later into this pull that I don't actually need pro damage and I start pressing Crash Lightning off CD. Now, I started this dungeon with 2 stacks of Tempest. The way to do this is to pre-stack your Tempest weak aura so that you are 10 Maelstrom away from proccing Tempest while you are in the lobby for the dungeon. Then you would spam Storm Strike on a dummy until Awakening Storms has procced 4 times, and then put up a pull timer. In the pull timer, you would press Ascendance, although it doesn't really matter to do that anymore as long as you have Maelstrom. And after the key goes in, but before the yellow shield goes down, then you would press a 10 Maelstrom Healing Surge. This will proc Tempest, refreshing your original stack, giving you 2 fresh Tempests. A note is that in this patch, they have attempted to stop this by resetting your Tempest progress as the yellow shield goes down. This does not stop us. Now to briefly talk about tier. The 2 set is a passive damage increase to Storm Strike and Doom Winds, and the 4 set is essentially a passive damage increase to Crash Lightning. You do get mini Doom Winds procs, however, as they are now 3-second duration, it is very hard to react and fit a relevant spell in, so just treat that as free damage. The stacks from the tier set last 30 seconds. In AoE, you'll never have to worry about overcapping or running out, but in single target, you might have to keep an eye on it and crash to not waste stacks. Now, looking at the talent tree, there are actually many options to take. The top and middle gate are going to be the same every time. There is not much you can do up here. But the bottom gate, however, is almost completely flexible. Primordial Storm is a big burst AoE button and is quite important for AoE situations, but taking those talent points can be a considerable single target loss. Ascendance gives you a damage cooldown and puts power into your spenders, but it is no longer as important as it used to be, and there are builds that are viable and don't play Ascendance. Feral Spirits are a pretty strong physical damage amp, and you could play either Flowing or Witch Doctors. Frostwitch also serves the same purpose as a physical damage amp, and in Stormbringer you don't have to track it because it's pretty much always up as you are always spending. It is definitely hard to take Elemental Spirits now. And Elemental Assault is a big single target talent, but it is not possible to take Elemental Assault 2 points if you want everything else. This tree does have a bit of a dilemma choosing between AoE and single target. Here is an example no Ascendance build. It does do more consistent and more single target damage than the no Ascendance build with 3 capstones, but losing out on the burst cooldown of Ascendance can be pretty rough. This build also does not synergize with PI. And to talk about the raid build, it is quite simple. We play Ascendance, Wolves, Frost Witch, and Elemental Assault. You do forego Lava Lash to take Ice Strike and Hailstorm, but they are the weakest possible fillers, and you will go an entire fight with only a few casts of Ice Strike and maybe one cast of Frost Shock. This build plays the same rotations and openers as previously in the guide, just replacing Lava Lash with Ice Strike. And that will be the end of this guide. I didn't go over everything in as much detail as I did last season, but I do think most things are quite similar if you played the last iteration of Enhancement Shaman in Season 1. A lot has definitely changed though, and a lot of people have been switching over to Totemic for Mythic Plus. I do still think Stormbringer has a lot of potential, and there's probably a build that is honestly as performant as Totemic and Mythic Plus. And I do think Stormbringer will be quite good in Raid.